Disclaimer: this reading has been adapted for our younger audience. However, this is an adult book and the original text includes some strong language and adult themes. Rivers of London by Ben Aaronvitch. Chapter 1, Material Witness. It started at 1:30 on a cold Tuesday morning in January when Martin Turner, street performer and, in his own words, apprentice gigolo, tripped over a body in front of the East Portico in St Paul's at Covent Garden. Martin, who was none too sober himself, at first thought the body was that of one of the many celebrants who'd chosen the piazza as a convenient outdoor toilet and dormitory. Being a seasoned Londoner, Martin gave the body the London once over, a quick glance to determine whether this was a drunk, a crazy, or a human being in distress. The fact that it was entirely possible for someone to be all three simultaneously is why Good Samaritanism in London is considered an extreme sport, a bit like base jumping or crocodile wrestling. Martin, noting the good quality coat and shoes, had just pegged the body as a drunk when he noticed that it was in fact missing its head. As Martin noted to the detectives conducting his interview, it was a good thing he'd been inebriated because otherwise he would have wasted time screaming and running about, especially once he realised he was standing in a pool of blood. Instead, with the slow, methodical patience of the drunk and terrified, Martin Turner dialed 999 and asked for the police. The police emergency centre alerted the nearest incident response vehicle, and the first officers arrived on the scene 6 minutes later. One officer stayed with a suddenly sober Martin while his partner confirmed that there was a body and that, everything else being equal, it probably wasn't a case of accidental death. They found the head 6 metres away where it had rolled behind one of the neoclassical columns that fronted the church's portico. The responding officers reported back to control, who alerted the area murder investigation team, whose duty officer, the most junior detective constable on the team, arrived half an hour later. He took one look at Mr. Headless and woke his governor. With that, the whole pomp and majesty that is a Metropolitan Police murder investigation descended on the 25 metres of open cobbles between the church portico and the market building. The pathologist arrived to certify death, make a preliminary assessment of the cause and cart the body away for its post-mortem. There was a short delay while they found a big enough evidence bag for the head. The forensic teams turned up mob-handed and, to prove they were the important ones, demanded that the secure perimeter be extended to include the whole west end of the piazza. To do this, they needed more uniforms at the scene, so the DCI, who was senior investigating officer, called up a Charing Cross Nick and asked if they had any to spare. The shift commander, upon hearing the magic word overtime, marched into the section house and volunteered everyone out of their nice warm beds. Thus, the secure perimeter was expanded, searches were made, junior detectives sent off on mysterious errands, and finally, at just after 5 o'clock, it all ground to a halt. The body was gone, the detectives had left, and the forensic people unanimously agreed there was nothing more that could be done until dawn, which was 3 hours away. Until then, they just needed a couple of mugs to guard the crime scene until shift change, which is how I came to be standing around Covent Garden in the freezing wind at 6 o'clock in the morning, and why it was me that met the ghost. Sometimes I wonder whether, if I'd been the one that went for coffee and not Leslie May, my life would have been much less interesting and certainly much less dangerous. Could it have been anyone, or was it destiny? When I'm considering this, I find it helpful to quote the wisdom of my father, who once told me, "Who knows why the hell anything happens?" Covent Garden is a large piazza in the centre of London, with the Royal Opera House at the east end, a covered market in the centre, and St Paul's Church at the west end. It was once London's principal fruit and veg market, but that got shifted south of the river 10 years before I was born. It had a long and varied history, mostly involving crime, prostitution and the theatre, but now it's a tourist market. St Paul's Church is known as the Actors' Church to differentiate it from the cathedral, which was first built by Inigo Jones in 1638. I know all this because there's nothing like standing around in a freezing wind to make you look for distractions. And there was a large and remarkably detailed information plaque attached to the side of the church. Did you know, for instance, that the first recorded victim of the 1665 plague outbreak, the one that ends with London burning down, is buried in its graveyard? I did, after 10 minutes spent sheltering from the wind. The murder investigation team had closed off the west of the piazza by stringing tape across the entrances to King Street and Henrietta Street and along the frontage of the covered market. I was guarding the church end where I could shelter in the portico, and WPC Leslie May, my fellow probationer, guarded the piazza side where she could shelter in the market. Leslie was short, blonde and always in an impossibly good mood. We'd gone through basic training at Hendon together before being transferred to Westminster for our probation. We maintained a strictly professional relationship. We'd gone through basic training at Hendon together before being transferred to Westminster for our probation, and we maintained a really, really good friendship. Because we were both probationary constables, an experienced PC had been left to supervise us, a responsibility he diligently pursued from an all-night caff on St Martin's Court. My phone rang. It took me a while to dig it out from among the stab vest, utility belt, baton, handcuffs, digital police radio and cumbersome but mercifully waterproof reflective jacket. When I finally managed to answer, it was Leslie. "I'm going for a coffee," she said. "Do you want one?" I looked over at the crowded market and I saw her wave. "You're a lifesaver," I said, and watched as she darted off towards James Street. She hadn't been gone more than a minute when I saw a figure by the portico, a short man in a suit tucked into the shadows behind the nearest column. I gave the prescribed Metropolitan Police first greeting. "Oi," I said, "what do you think you're doing?" The figure turned and I saw a flash of pale, startled-looking face. The man was wearing a shabby, old-fashioned suit complete with waistcoat, fob watch and a battered top hat. I thought it might be one of the street performers licensed to perform in the piazza, but it seemed a tad early in the morning for that. "Over here," he said, and beckoned. I made sure I knew where my extendable baton was, and I headed over. Policemen were supposed to loom over members of the public, even helpful ones. That's why we wear big boots and pointy helmets. But when I got closer, I found the man was tiny, 5'0" in his shoes. I fought the urge to squat down to get our faces level. "I saw the old thing, Squire," said the man. "Terrible thing it was. They drum it into you at Hendon. Before you do anything else, get a name and an address." I produced my notebook and pen. "Can I ask your name, sir?" "Of course you can, Squire. My name is Nicholas Warpenny, but don't ask me how to spell it because I never really got me letters." "Are you a street performer?" I asked. "You might say that," said Nicholas. "Certainly my performances have hitherto been confined to the street, though on a cold night like this I wouldn't be averse to bringing some interiority to my proceedings, if you catch my meaning, Squire." There was a badge pinned to his lapel, a pewter skeleton caught mid-caper. It seemed a bit goth for a short Cockney geezer, but then London is the pick and mix cultural capital of the world. I wrote down street performer. "Now, sir," I said, "if you could just tell me what it was you saw." "I saw plenty, Squire." "But you were here earlier this morning?" My instructors were also clear not to cue your witness. Information is only supposed to flow in one direction. "I'm here morning, noon and night," said Nicholas, who obviously hadn't gone to the same lectures I had. "If you've witnessed something," I said, "perhaps you'd better come and give a statement." "That would be a problem," said Nicholas, "seeing as I'm dead." I thought I hadn't heard him correctly. "If you're worried about your safety, I ain't worried about anything anymore, Squire," said Nicholas. "On account I've been dead these past 120 years. "If you're dead," I said, before I could stop myself, "how come we're talking?" "You must have a touch of the sight," said Nicholas. "Some of the old Palladino?" He looked at me closely. "Touch of that from your father, maybe. Dockman, was he? Sailor? Some such thing? He gave you that good curly hair and them lips." "Can you prove you're dead?" I asked. "Whatever you say, Squire," said Nicholas, and stepped forward into the light. He was transparent, the way holograms in films are transparent. Three-dimensional, definitely really there, and definitely transparent. I could see right through him to the white tent the forensics team had set up to protect the area around the body. Right, I thought, just because you've gone mad doesn't mean you should stop acting like a policeman. "Can you tell me what you saw?" I asked. "I saw the first gent, him that was murdered, walking down from James Street, fine high-stepping man with a military bearing, very gaily dressed in the modern fashion. What I would have considered a prime plant in my corporeal days." Nicholas paused to spit. Nothing reached the ground. "Then the second gent, in what did the murdering, he comes strolling the other way up from Henrietta Street, not so nicely turned out, wearing them blue workman's trousers and an oilskin like a fisherman. They passed each other just there," Nicholas pointed to a spot 10 metres short of the church portico. "I reckon they know each other, because they both nod, but they don't stop for a chat or nothing, which is understandable, it not being a night for loitering." That's part of Chapter 1. And as part of our Drop Everything and Read, we encourage you to go to the library today and pick up a copy of this book, Rivers of London, to continue your reading. And remember, at Sydney Russell School, we are lifelong readers. We really hope you enjoyed this story.